What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Wednesday, November 6th, 2024 edition of the Daily Energy Newsbeat Stand-Up. Here are today's top headlines. First up, EU's Jorgensen wants cheaper energy end to Russian fuel imports. Interesting. Next up, Russia's oil revenue plunged 29% in October as crude oil prices fall. And finally, in the news segment, Bulgaria starts constructing an irreversible nuclear project within U.S. nuclear reactors. Ooh, spicy. Stu will then toss it to me. I will quickly cover what happened in the oil and gas markets and mainly talk about oil prices relative to what's happened with earnings. The one earnings I want to dive into is Northern Oil and Gas. And then the elephant in the room, yes, we will be talking about the U.S. election. As you guys listen to this on Wednesday, we're recording this about 5 o'clock on Tuesday night. So polls are closing. What we're going to do is then we're going to come back around 11 p.m. as things are wrapping up, throw it on the back end so that you can get our kind of analysis of what we see is going on and mainly how it pertains to the energy business. We'll bring on most likely good friend of the show, Ray Trevino. We may bring on some other people, but stay tuned. We will have an election roundup at the end, Stu. But man, it's going to be a long night for us. So let's kick it off. Where do you want to begin?
Hey, let's get started over here at EU's Jorgensen wants cheaper energy in Russian fuel imports. Dan Jorgensen is the designate for the next EU Energy Commissioner. Michael, listen to this. If I'm approved as a commissioner, I will make it a top priority to bring down the prices for energy for our industry. Okay. Sounds like Kamala. For the former Danish climate and energy minister told the assembly in Brussels, he's not going to make it.
No, there's no way. And I think, from the hard part about EU is it's a little damned if you do, damned if you don't, from the standpoint of they need to get off Russian gas in order to shore up their energy security. But in doing so is going to massively raise energy prices. So the real question is, what do you do? If you were EU Energy Commissioner, what would you do?
I would be rooting for the end of the war. I would be buying all the cheap Russian gas that I can so that I could get my economies going again, and then plan for new technologies of low energy and low cost to replace that Russian gas and do it in an orderly fashion.
No, absolutely. All right, what's next?
Hey, let's go to our buddies over there in Russia. Russia's oil revenues plunged 29% in October as crude oil's prices fell. Listen to these numbers. Bloomberg's calculations, a Russian budget received last month 10.8 billion or 1.5 trillion rubles from oil, which is down from 29%. Total budget proceeds from oil and natural gas combined also declined about 25% to $12.4 billion. That's a significant chunk to Russia.
Here's a significant chunk, even the fact that it plunged. And again, it goes to show you how much oil prices affect underlying profitability of these upstream companies and how much that then flows backwards into the economy. Again, it's not breaking any new ground here. Oil prices affect oil revenues when it comes to these companies, but something like Russia, specifically Saudi Arabia and OPEC, they're all for this. It's why you've seen, in my opinion, Saudi step back and say, we don't really want lower oil prices because this is what's going to happen.
Exactly. What they're now saying is that this is a indicator, and why I picked this story was because they need higher prices just to meet their budget numbers. Yep. So you're going to see OPEC Plus continue to lower production.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's move to Bulgaria.
You got to love a good Bulgaria. I reached out to Irina Slav on this one. Bulgaria starts constructing an irreversible nuclear project with U.S. reactors. This one is really a long-term problem for Bulgaria. I think this is fantastic, and we should export our nuclear technology, but this is from South Korea and Westinghouse out of the U.S. I did not know that. The reactors are expected to cost more than $14 billion, and the state has already invested $1 billion out of the new Cold Stove New Capacities Project company. That's unbelievable.
It is pretty unbelievable. What's creepy is the title, Irreversible Nuclear Project. It just kind of creeps me out. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see. I mean, I'm all for nuclear here. We know we have got a good friend of the show.
Doug
What's his name?
Sandridge.
Yes,
Doug
Doug
Sandridge.
Sandridge. He's on the oil and gas for nuclear. We love that.
Yes, he is the chair over there over the oil and gas executives in support of nuclear. It's a good organization.
Yep. It's a great one. Just I asked you a question. I was
Oh,
reading,
okay.
however, the Bulgarian nuclear project must be notified of the European Commission, which must approve the construction of the two reactors. And I posed it to you. I said, do you think the EU will
I
approve it?
think they will, and I really think that they will do. I think they'll approve it. It won't be any problem because I think they want U.S. nuclear as opposed to Russian nuclear. But
Well,
hey,
hey,
I
we'll
think it'd be
see.
great.
All right,
Cool.
well,
I'll see
let's
you.
quickly jump into some oil and gas finance. Before we do that, guys, as always, we've got to pay the bills. Again, as always, the news and quote unquote analysis that you hear is brought to you by the world's greatest website, energynewsbeat.com, the best place for all your energy and oil and gas news. Stu and the team do a tremendous job making sure that website stays up to speed. Everything you need to know to be at the tip of the spear when it comes to the energy and the oil and gas business. Go ahead and subscribe to our Substack. There's a link in the description below. There's also a link for the timestamps, links to the articles that we cover. But again, check out our Substack. We really appreciate everybody subscribing there. Also, guys, again, I know it's the eve of the election. You're thinking about other things, but if you are trying to save money on taxes this year, if you are paying taxes in 2024, that's so 2023. There are ways to mitigate your tax burden. Investing in oil and gas is one of them. Check us out, investinoil.energynewsbeat.com if you want to learn more information about how to do that. Not only are you going to be able to mitigate your tax burden, but you are also able to get some monthly dividends and also diversify your portfolio. Again, taxes are 2023. Move into 2024. We can and have options for you. Investinoil.energynewsbeat.com. When we look at the markets, Stu, I mean, everything was fairly, on an open basis. The stock market was actually down today, finished lower, actually finished about 15 points lower, but it was up overall from the opening. It was up about 1.3 percentage points on the day. NASDAQ was actually up about 1.3 percentage points on a day over day basis. SM 2-year yields up a tenth of a percentage point, 10-year yields up a tenth of a percentage point. Dollar index tumbles actually about a half a percentage point. Bitcoin up 2.75 percentage points, just right at that 70,000 mark. Crude oil was actually up about 1.5 percentage points today, sitting at about $72. It's actually up over 72.50 earlier in the afternoon. Brent up a little bit, slightly less than that, up about a half a percentage point. 75.77. Natural gas, pretty explosive today, and then kind of fell off the table. We were up over $2.80, fell all the way down to $2.68. Main reason for the movements on both of those commodities is one, tensions of what's going on. Obviously, there's an election. We're in the process of, it's 5 p.m. right now. Polls are closing as we spoke. The EIA, we are awaiting more API and EIA crude oil inventory number. Wait, the API crude oil inventories numbers must have just dropped. So we'll go ahead and pull that up right now. But the other thing that is interesting, so we actually saw the API right here. I guess got it pulled up. 3.13 million barrel build of the API crude oil inventories is actually probably what caused a little bit of a drop off in the late afternoon. Again, we are up at 72.50, but again, the hurricane season that is going on right now is mainly, the shut-ins that we are expecting could come in there. And then we're also looking at just some other kind of, again, overall craziness with what is going on in the election right now. The other thing I wanted to point out was Northern Oil and Gas. They went ahead and dropped their earnings today. Pretty good numbers if you're Northern. Their stock popped about 1.2 percentage points on the news. Problem is that's about how much oil was up, so how much you can say their earnings contributed to that, who knows. Kind of top line headlines: 121,000 BOE per day. That's about 58% oil, or if you break that down, that's about 70,913 barrels of oil per day. They only had about 9.5 wells come online during the quarter, which is, they're claiming is low. Cash flow was up at about $385 million, had about $178.1 million of free cash flow, which is actually up 32 percentage points. Basically they DNC'd and spent for about 52.2 2 net wells, which is actually up 11.1 net wells since the quarter of 22. They repurchased about 400, a little less than 400,000 shares. The big thing that they talk about is they finally have closed their joint venture with SM Energy from purchasing of XL Resources of about $519 million. What I find interesting, when you dig through the numbers here, I'm always interested in kind of figuring out, okay, how much you got to spend to maintain EBITDA. Again, growing EBITDA is great. The question is, how much are you spending? And so when you look at what they have here from an EBITDA reconciliation standpoint, or in a year by year standpoint, you're talking about their EBITDA is about 300, and you're talking about $340 million, let's give or take, in overall in kind of the year, maybe a little bit more, let's give it about $400 million. But in terms of spending, man, you got to stay, they're spending about, gosh, $500 million a year, and EBITDA is fairly flat. I mean, they've grown EBITDA from $325 million a year, or per quarter. So you're talking a little over, 2 million, you're looking at about 2 billion of EBITDA over on a year by year basis. But that's basically about what they're spending to get that. So again, it comes back to, guys, the idea of, and there's a lot of money that's got to get spent in order to maintain your EBITDA margins. The nice part is, in my opinion, Northern Oil and Gas does the best job of doing that from the standpoint of, a lot of what they do is non-op. They're very slim on the G&A side. They don't necessarily need a huge amount of spend. I mean, you're only spending about $7.3 million on G&A. That's per quarter. That's pretty crazy relative to what their EBITDA spend is, but it just goes to show you how much capital is required in this business. It's one of the reasons why, when capital is hard to come by, these people get dogged. But without further ado, we're going to come back with you in a bit with our election recap. Who knows what's going to happen, folks? It'll be spicy.
Buckle up.
Well, Stu, we're back. It's about 5 hours-ish later since we recorded.
What a night.
And by all accounts, I think Trump's going to win.
I think he is. I don't want to jinx it, because I think it's still before 2 o'clock in the morning when all the voters, the votes show up like they did before that was allegedly showed up. But I think that what we did see is that they did get it too big to rig. And you're watching the CNN, they're not happy. And you're watching the other folks. I think the Trump team did an outstanding job getting it out there and making it too big to rig, getting people to vote early. Ted Cruz won. Yay, Ted. This is going to be, I bet that we will also see right now, President Trump is up in the popular vote as well. This is going to be a mandate. We're going to take the House right now. At the time that we're recording this, it looks like they're going to take the Senate and possibly even gain a seat or two in the House. This is huge, because it now means that if he gets the popular vote, how can he get the popular vote and have all of those things that they've been saying about him, with all of the gains of the minority men and all of the Hispanic men and women gaining, and him gaining all those things? How can he be such a racist if all these people vote for him? This is a huge win. And Michael, in the energy space, that means that we're going to get some help with the regulatory issues. We're going to get some help that the Chevron deference is actually going to make a difference, that we are going to be able to be a good partner. I've been watching and communicating with some of my folks around the world, and they are out of their mind. There are go Trump parties all over the world. This man they're wanting peace around the world.
Yeah, I mean, I would not have expected. I think what you said is quite true. He's going to win the popular vote. I mean, I'm looking at, the New York Times, they have the little election meter. It's 9:39 here Central Time, and he's at 86% chance to win. I mean, that's pretty crazy this early on. I would have told you it would have been way more I figured it'd be toss up until, like you said, 2 a.m. when all the votes finally arrived. So it's pretty crazy that he's already gotten to this point. Like I said, it's 9:40 as we record this. Currently, the New York Times live presidential forecast, Trump will estimate to have 297 electoral college votes. Kamala Harris with 241. He's up 0.8 percentage points on the popular vote. I mean, you're right there. That's a mandate right there. I mean,
It
for
is.
so long it's been there's no way for the Republicans. I mean, no one's even talked about the popular vote. Like, historically, Republicans have always lost the popular vote going back to 2016. I don't know historically, just in the last really two elections, from the
Right.
standpoint of, we always talk about New York and Florida are going to tip the scales. Man, but holy smokes, it's pretty
But here's
crazy.
the thing, if we don't get our elections under control, and if any of the funny business that's been going on in elections, people need to go to jail for 10 years. I'm serious. This needs to stop. This bull shenanigans around elections and cheating has to stop.
Nope, it absolutely will. Two things. Yay, as you said on Ted Cruz. I think it was a lot. He kind of blew it out relative to what I think the all signs pointed to. So that's great to hear. But let's
Yeah.
turn now, as we are the Energy News Beat podcast, and finish up with the impacts on energy. You go first.
Well, I'll tell you what, the with this impact and with what's needed around the world right now, and that is LNG exports, we are looking at more investments from foreign countries into the US on our energy is fantastic for US jobs and our economy. This is huge. People are going to want to buy our natural gas.
So I'll answer this question, but I want to pose it to you first. The question I keep getting asked is, if Trump wins with his drill baby drill strategy, where do prices go? You're up first.
I think we're going to hit the 85 to 90 still. And the reason I say that, I'm a bull because we talked about that a little earlier in the show. Russia needs it. Russia took a 26% hit in this past quarter on their because of lower numbers. Take a look at Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia cannot pay the sovereign debt or the sovereign fund at anything less than $80. They control a significant chunk. The US controls a significant chunk. And at $80 oil, we can lower our interest rates if we stop putting renewable energy out there. You're going to see the death of the wind farms and the whales go, yay! And if we stop doing that, you're going to see a lower energy price. It's all about getting lower energy prices. And if we go to natural gas everywhere we can and get that cost per kilowatt per hour down, yay, Trump will do it. He said he's going to lower, Trump said, I will lower your electric bills 50% in my first year. The only way President Trump can lower your energy bills by 50% is natural gas. Takes too many years for nuclear. I see a big boon for natural gas power plants.
Yeah, I think there is, just as a quick, it's now 9:43 and it's up to it's now 85% chance of victory. So it was up at 88, it's going down. I think it's because they're calling Wisconsin for Kamala Harris. I think that's what they're doing right now. No, 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 no. It's 66% for Trump. What are they calling for Harris? Something's flipping around here. I got CNBC up in the background because all I want to know is what happens to big tech. So to answer the question, and then we'll let everybody get out of here. You're going to hear enough politics the whole week, so we don't want to bore you. But as goes with energy, I tend to take the opposite approach from you. Of you would expect prices to fall solely based on the theory that a Republican administration, going back to really Bill Clinton, prices have risen during Democratic administrations and fallen during Republican administrations. So if you just lay that theory out over the arc of his presidency, you will see prices come down. The question is, where do they bottom out? Is it 50? Is it 60? Are we at the bottom now at 70? Is Stu right? Will we actually see a curve? I think you bring up a very key point, and I know RT Trevino, a good friend of the show, he was supposed to join us, but he's in his pajamas right now. He texted us, so we didn't want to we didn't want to scare everybody with that. But
He's a cool
it,
cat.
it's very cool. It comes down to Saudi Arabia. It really
Yep.
does. What is Saudi going to do? Are they going to turn the taps on, or are they going to keep tightening it up? I
Well,
think,
OPEC Plus just said that they are going to, Russia said they're going to stop the.
well, that's what they said. The question is, you can say one. We hear too often people say one thing and do the other. So yes, that's all the reports, but things can change. Maybe they were saying that
Right.
based off the maybe they thought Kamala was going. I don't know. All I would say is if you're in oil and gas, I would brace for a slightly lower oil price. Now, I think the interesting thing to think about is a lot of why companies aren't as profitable as you'd think they were at $70, $80 oil is inflation. So if you can
Right.
bring down inflation overall, that means the cost to procure services is a lot better and a lot cheaper, meaning that there could actually be more of a margin to be made at a slightly lower oil price if in fact the overall inflation comes down. I think you're absolutely right on the renewable standpoint is that obviously I'm going to go out on a limb, and this is a huge limb, that a lot of the green new scam is going to get rolled back, meaning hopefully that contributes to a lower cost of energy regardless of where oil prices go. I do think natural gas is going to naturally rise, if only because we're going to start exporting more. And the more natural gas we export, the higher that price will go. Part of the reason why the prices domestically have been so constrained is we don't have anywhere to put it and we can't quite export it. So obviously, things are going. It's now 947. He's up to an 87% chance of victory, and he's plus 1 percentage point, according to the New York Times, on the popular vote. It's about time we switch
Wow.
over to MSNBC. I saw this great tweet by one of my good follows on Twitter, BRV. He says, Fox until it's called, then MSNBC. To see him melt down.
I've been watching X. I've got Decision USA
Yeah.
over here with
How's your
Larry.
war room looking?
I've got my war room working, getting to see General Flynn and Larry.
Of course, you got General Flynn.
Hey, he's my people.
Well, all right. That's it, folks. We'll let you get out of here. You're going to hear so much political talk. We just wanted to make sure we tie it into energy. So Stu's still saying $85 to $90 oil and gas. I'm probably saying 60 to 70 is kind of that threshold. Maybe you might see a high 50s, but I don't necessarily see getting it lower down there. I think we both see natural gas prices increasing. Either way, I think that's good for oil. Either way, Trump is going to be good for the oil business if you work in there. Stu's already calling a shot. Shocker, Stu, you voted for Trump? Who would have thought? So,
Wow, I like President Trump.
oh, absolutely. So, well, all right, guys. Well, with that, we will let you get out of here, get back to work, and maybe you don't have to hear about the election for the next 2 weeks, which, for at least for the next month, which will be great. I
I
think
don't
we're
want to see
all a
another
little
ad.
electioned out.
No more ad.
Stu can sleep at night. There was no coup. There was no, Stu can finally get a good night's sleep, which is good. So we appreciate it, guys. Thanks for checking us out. World's greatest podcast. For Stuart Turley, I'm Michael Tanner. We'll see you tomorrow, folks.
Right.